Hello and welcome back to Exploring the Master Key System, Teachings through Positively Taking Care. In this video, we'll be covering part 18 of the Master Key System, where Charles Haanel writes, and I quote, "How truth is rising full road before an astonished multitude, and how thought is the magic by which the human is transformed into a being who thinks and knows and feels and acts, and how affluence within is found to be the secret of attraction for affluence without." Hello and welcome back to Exploring the Master Key System Teachings Part 18. In this video, as in all the videos in this series, we first start with the brief introduction, then we go over some of the basic concepts, and then some of the study guide questions, and finally with the technique exercise for the week. So to begin, the introduction reads like this. Introduction Part 18. In order to grow, we must obtain what is necessary for our growth. This is brought about through the law of attraction. This principle is the sole means by which the individual is differentiated from the universal. Think for a moment what a man would be if he were not a husband, father, or brother, if he were not interested in social, economical, political, or religious world. He would be nothing but an abstract theoretical ego. He exists, therefore, only in his relation to the whole, in his relation to other men, in his relation to society. This relation constitutes his environment, and in no other way. It is evident, therefore, that the individual is simply the differentiation of the one universal mind which lighteth every man that cometh into the world, and his so-called individuality or personality consists of nothing but the manner in which he relates with the whole. This we call his environment, and is brought about by the law of attraction. Part 18, which follows, has something more to say concerning this important law. And now to move on to the basic concepts in Part 18, Mr. Haanel writes, "There is a change in the thought of the world. This change is silently transpiring in our midst, and is more important than any which the world has undergone since the downfall of paganism. These present revolution in the opinions of all classes of men, the highest and the most cultured of men, as well as those of the laboring class, stand unparalleled in the history of the world. Science has of late made such vast discoveries, has revealed such an infinity of resources, has unveiled such enormous possibilities and such unsuspected forces, that scientific men more and more hesitate to affirm certain theories as established and beyond doubt, or to deny other theories as absurd or impossible. A new civilization is being born. Customs, creeds, and precedent are passing. Vision, faith, and service are taking their place. The feathers of tradition are being melted off from humanity. And as the impurities of materialism are being consumed, thought is being liberated, and truth is rising full road before an astonished multitude. The world is on the eve of a new consciousness, a new power, and a new realization within the self. Physical science has resolved matter into molecules, molecules into atoms, and atoms into energy. And it has remained for Mr. J. Fleming, in an address before the Royal Institute, to resolve this energy into mind. He says, "In its ultimate essence, energy may be incomprehensible by us except as an exposition of the direct operation, that which we call mind or will. And this mind is indwelling and ultimate. It is immanent in matter and in spirit. It is the sustaining, energizing, all-pervading spirit of the universe. Every living thing must be sustained by this omnipotent intelligence, and we find the difference in individual lives to be largely measured by the degree of this intelligence which they manifest. It is greater intelligence that places the animal in a higher scale of being than the plant, the man higher than the animal, and we find that this increased intelligence is again indicated by the power of the individual to control modes of action and thus to consciously adjust himself to his environment. It is this adjustment that occupies the attention of the greatest minds, and this adjustment consists of nothing else than the recognition of an existing order in the universal mind, for it is well known that this mind will obey us precisely in proportion as we first obey it. It is the recognition of natural laws that has enabled us to annihilate time and space, soar into the air, and to make iron float. The greater the degree of intelligence, the greater will be our recognition of these natural laws, and the greater will be the power we can possess. It is the recognition of the self as an individualization of the universal intelligence that enables the individual to control those forms of intelligence which have not yet reached this level of self-recognition. They do not know that this universal intelligence permeates all things ready to be called into action. They do not know that it is responsive to every demand, and they are therefore in bondage to the law of their own being. And then Mr. Haanel writes, thought is creative, and the principle on which the law is based is sound and legitimate and is inherent in the nature of all things. But this creative power does not originate in the individual, but in the universal, which is the source and foundation of all energy and substance, and the individual is simply the channel for the distribution of this energy. The individual is simply the means by which the universal produces the various combinations which result in the formation of phenomena, which depend upon the law of vibration, whereby various rates of rapidity of motion in the primary substance form new substances only in certain exact numerical ratios. Thought is the invisible link which the individual comes into communication with the universal, the finite with the infinite, the seen with the unseen. Thought is the magic by which the human is transformed into a being who thinks and knows and feels and acts. As the proper apparatus has enabled the eye to discover worlds without number, millions of miles away, so with the proper understanding, man has been enabled to communicate with the universal mind, the source of all power. The understanding which is usually developed is about as valuable as a VCR without a videotape. In fact, it is usually nothing more than a belief, which means nothing at all. The savage of the Cannibal Islands believes something, but that proves nothing. The only belief which is of any value to anyone is a belief that has been put to a test and demonstrated to be a fact. It is then no longer a belief, but has become a living faith or truth. And this truth has been put to the test by hundreds of thousands of people and has been found to be the truth exactly in proportion to the usefulness of the apparatus which they used. A man would not expect to locate stars hundreds of millions of miles away without a sufficiently strong telescope. And for this reason, science is continuously engaging in building larger and more powerful telescopes and is continuously rewarded by the additional knowledge of the heavenly bodies. So with the understanding. Men are continually making progress in the method by which they use to come into communication with the universal mind and its infinite possibilities. The universal mind manifests itself in the objective through the principle of attraction that each atom has for every other atom in infinite degrees of intensity. It is by this principle of combining and attracting that things are brought together. This principle is of universal application and is the sole means whereby the purpose of existing is carried into effect. And finally, Mr. Haanel continues to write, the expression of growth is met in a most beautiful manner through the instrumentality of this universal principle. In order to grow, we must obtain what is essential for our growth. But as we are at all times a complete thought entity, this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. Growth is therefore conditioned on reciprocal action, and we find that on the mental plane, like attracts like. The mental vibrations respond only to the extent of their vibratory harmony. It is clear, therefore, that thoughts of abundance will respond to similar thoughts. The wealth of the individual is seen to be what he inherently is. Affluence within is found to be the secret of attraction for affluence without. The ability to produce is found to be the real source of wealth of the individual. It is for this reason that he who has his heart in his work is certain to meet with unbound success. He will give and continually give, and the more he gives, the more he will receive. What do the great financiers of Wall Street, the captains of industry, the statesmen, the great corporation attorneys, the inventors, the physicians, the authors, what do each of these contribute to the sum of human happiness but the power of their thought? Thought is the energy which the law of attraction is brought into operation, which eventually manifests in abundance. The universal mind is static mind or substance in equilibrium. It is differentiated into form by our power to think. Thought is the dynamic phase of mind. Power depends upon consciousness of power. Unless we use it, we lose it. And unless we are conscious of it, we cannot use it. The use of this power depends upon attention. The degree of attention determines our capacity for the acquirement of knowledge, which is another name for power. Attention has been held to be the distinguishing mark of genius. The cultivation of attention depends upon practice. The incentive of attention is interest. The greater the interest, the greater the attention. The greater the attention, the greater the interest. Action and reaction. Begin by paying attention. Before long, you will have aroused interest. This interest will attract more attention, and this attention will produce more interest, and so on. This practice will enable you to cultivate the power of attention. And now to go over some of the study guide questions in Part 18, starting with 171. How is the difference in individual lives measured? Answer: by the degree of intelligence which they manifest. 172. What is the law by which the individual may control other forms of intelligence? Answer: a recognition of self as an individualization of the universal intelligence. 175. What is the connecting link between the individual and the universal? Answer: thought. 176. What is the principle by which the means of existence is carried into effect? Answer: the law of love. 178. Upon what condition does the law of growth depend? Answer: upon reciprocal action. The individual is complete at all times, and this makes it possible to receive only as we give. 179. What is it that we give? Answer: thought. 180. What do we receive? Answer: thought, which is substance in equilibrium and which is constantly being differentiated in form by what we think. For this week's technique exercise, Mr. Haanel writes, this week concentrate upon your power to create, seek insight, perception. Try to find a logical basis for the faith which is in you. Let the thought dwell on the fact that the physical man lives and moves and has his being in the sustainer of all organic life, air, that he must breathe to live. Then let the thought rest on the fact that the spiritual man also lives and moves and has his being in a similar but subtler energy upon which he must depend for life, and that as in the physical world, no life assumes form until after a seed is sown, and no higher fruit than that of the parent stock can be produced. So in the spiritual world, no effect can be produced until the seed is sown, and the fruit will depend upon the nature of the seed, so that the results which you secure depend upon your perception of law in the mighty domain of causation, the highest evolution of human consciousness. So that's it for the exploration of the Master Key System Teachings Part 18. Please remember to share your comments, your insights, and your opinions in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.